Good morning. I see a few of you are here with me already this morning. I'll ask you to send me a little reaction or a chat or a question or something to let me know if you can see me and hear me and see my screen. If any of you can let me know about that. Okay, Kathy, thank you for letting me know. And Gary, thank you. All right, looks like we'll be prepared. Thanks, Jeffrey. All right, we've got a couple minutes before 10 o'clock and then we will get started. So I might wait one extra minute just to see if there are a few more people that come in, but we'll just give it a little bit of time here to make sure we get everybody that's coming. Okay. Looks like we've got about as many as attended the last couple of sessions, so I'm thinking we'll probably have everyone this morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining me again for the last of the three finance module webinars. Today we're talking about reconciling against your bank account and about some more reports. We've seen a few reports as we've gone through the previous sessions, and today we'll see some of the ones that are generally common in financial reporting and Shepherd staff. So thank you for joining me. I am ready to get started, so we'll go ahead and start here. As you know, webinars are being recorded. You'll get a link to see those. All the attendees will get that link. Also, people who have registered and not attended will get that link, so they'll have that to be able to watch after the fact if they haven't been able to join us live. They'll also be posted in the Shepherd Staff Help Center. I mentioned yesterday how to get to that straight from Shepherd Staff as well. If you go to Help in Shepherd Staff and click Training and then Videos, you'll be able to watch those webinars there as well. They won't be posted immediately, but they will be posted probably by the end of the week, possibly early next week at the latest. So let's go ahead and move on. I, again, am your host. My name is Kimberly. I've been with the company a little over 3 years. I really enjoy working with you guys out there in Concordia customer land. I love working with the churches. Everybody's so gracious, and I'm just thankful to be able to work with you guys. So you'll note that it says all microphones and phones have been muted. So if you're talking to me, I can't hear you, but if you would like to ask any questions as the time goes on, you can go to the little questions window in the webinar and type in all of your questions, and we will get those answered either online during the webinar, at the end in the Q&A session, or if necessary, we'll contact you afterwards to follow up and answer those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce now. I have Taylor with me again today. She is playing backup for me. Thank you again for filling in. I appreciate it so much, Taylor. And hopefully she'll be able to answer some of your questions in the question window as the session goes on. And again, if not, we will get to those at the end of the session or afterwards. We'll get back to you one way or the other. I'm very grateful to have Taylor with me today. So let's talk about what we're going to discuss today. Obviously, we're talking about the class agenda. That's right now. We're going to talk about bank statement reconciliation, how to verify that all of the transactions in your bank statement are in Shepherd staff and vice versa. So we'll go through that whole process together. We'll talk about how to post a reconciliation. We'll talk about how you can now reopen a posted reconciliation. That was with version 9.0. We're now on 9.1 and we have even more options. You can also reprint a reconciliation report. We'll talk about the 9.1 more options here in a minute. And this is that, charge statement reconciliations. So in 9.0, we made it so that the bank statement reconciliations were easier to work with and that you would be able to reopen them and reprint the reports and things like that. In 9.1, we've made it so that you can now do a reconciliation against your credit card statements, so a charge statement reconciliation. And we'll look at how to do that today too. So we'll also talk about some of the reports. Particularly, we'll look at your account and trial balance report and the balance sheet, the dedicated accounts report, and your income statement, and some of your treasurer's report options. And then we'll do that dreaded quiz again at the end there, and hopefully we'll have a little more time to get all of the questions in and still do your questions and answer at the end. I apologize for running overtime yesterday afternoon. Hopefully we'll get everything in much more efficiently today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch us over to Shepherd staff. And again, we are in our finance module. I've got it open already. And in this session, we're going to be talking about how to reconcile transactions against a bank statement. So that's the first thing that we'll go ahead and look at. You'll see I have a whole bunch of transactions that I can see here in my payments, my receipts, in all of my views and activity, and that I've also can see in some of my fields in Plan and Analyze. I can look at those under Activity Search or Ledger Line Search. These are all transaction information that I can view. We also looked yesterday at the general ledger report and some of the register reports for your checks and your payments and your receipts and things. Those are all ways that you can take a look at your transactions within Shepherd staff. But we also have a separate option that allows you to compare your transactions to your bank statement and check off the ones that are on the bank statement so that you can show exactly how that statement is being reconciled to your transactions in Shepherd staff. And to do that, we go to Tools and Settings here. And you'll see that under this section here, I have several little options. And we're going to start with Bank Statement. And here is Bank Statement Reconciliation. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to click Start. That's going to take me to a view where I can select which bank account I would like to reconcile. So I'm going to choose Central Trust Checking because that's what we've been doing most of our transactions from. And we'll be able to see all of the transactions here that are listed. And you'll notice that it's got a beginning date already defaulted in there, and it's got a beginning balance listed, and it's showing today as the ending date. But it doesn't have the ending balance or any of that. Now, some of this information is going to come from your bank statement. The beginning date, let's talk about that first. it is going to default to the oldest transaction that you have in Shepherd staff that has never been marked as cleared. So if you haven't marked it as cleared yet because it never cleared the bank, then it'll show up in this list. Now, sometimes people will see transactions from 3 years ago show up in this list. And if that's the case and they're not relevant to your current bank statement reconciliation or whatever, you can change this date so that it'll only show you the actual relevant dates. So for example, if you know you have a transaction from last month from like say October 1st that never got cleared because the person hasn't cashed their check yet or whatever, you could just change this date to go all the way back to October 1st. But if that was here already and you knew that they were not going to do that and we just wanted to clear the ones after it, you could change it to just where you know you need to go. So the beginning balance is going to be whatever was the ending balance of your last reconciliation. That's what's showing up in this field. So if you've never done a bank account reconciliation before, that will be at 0, and you'll just fill in whatever the beginning balance is that's listed on your bank statement. I am going to show you my little mocked up bank statement here. And whoops, let me get that open. Pardon me. Sample bank statement, there we go. So here is my sample bank statement. You'll notice that I've given it a statement date of 11/15. That's not usual. We're kind of fudging it a little bit this time so that you don't have to watch me check off all of the transactions for an entire month. We're just going to do 2 weeks worth so that you can see how this process works. But normally, obviously, your statement date would probably be at the end of the month, and it would show you the full month's transactions for that bank account for that month. So we are going to see if we can't make this show up. Oh, I did have it open. See if we can't make this show up side by side with our reconciliation view here. Oh, come here. There we go. And we're going to drag this over so that we can see more of that screen, and that should give us just enough of this screen so that we can look at them side by side. All right, so you'll see that my beginning balance here does match the beginning balance on my bank statement. If it didn't, I could update that and we could make sure that we have that correct. If I had done something different with my ending balance last month for some reason, or if there had subsequently been a change, we could correct that here. We're going to change that ending date to match the ending date on my statement, which again is an unusual and unstandard one, but we're going to do it that way so that we can see. And you'll notice the beginning balance, or the beginning balance is listed as of 11/1, but I have transactions going back into October here. And that beginning balance, the beginning date on my reconciliation is 10/27. So that's going to make sure that I catch those transactions that are before the beginning date on my actual statement. And then I need to put in the ending balance of my bank statement, which I have here, and that is $592,058.07. Okay, so now you'll see that it's showing me down here that I have a difference between my beginning and ending balance of $3,285.55. And this is going to show all of the payments and receipts and journal entries that I check off against my statement. And if everything goes well, that number will be 0 when we're finished, and we'll be able to post this reconciliation. So we're going to go ahead and walk through how that works. So I'm going to start with noting that you see the headers here. These are all clickable. So if it helps you in any way to match up with your statement, to sort these by any of the particular options, you can click those headers. So you'll notice that my statement is divided between payments and deposits here. So I'm going to sort by type, and you'll see that now I've got all payments at the top, and if I scroll down to the bottom, then I have some deposits down here that are receipts. R for receipts, P for payments. I also have document numbers listed, and I have dates and amounts, and I have the description. And if I scroll over, I also have the vendor. So that will help me match everything up so that I make sure I'm choosing the right transactions. So we'll see here that my very first one is Gleason Lawn and Landscaping on my bank statement. And there's that lawn care and landscaping. It's for $300. It was on 10/27, and that's the correct vendor. So I know that I've got that one right. I can check it off. Now to check it off, I'm going to double click. I want you to note that you have to double click to do it, or if I don't double click, I could just come down here and click, where to go? Clear. Click clear, and that'll check it off. So you have the options. Double clicking is easier because you're right there on the line already, but you have the ability to just click the clear button at the bottom to check off a line. There's also this option up here. I'll show you what that looks like. You could check them all off. And then instead of checking off each one individually, you could go through and find the ones that are not actually on your bank statement and uncheck those. That's an option. I usually try to make sure that I'm just going straight off of my bank statement. So I'm going to go ahead back and check this one. Next, we have Ameren electric bill for $121.47 on 10/31, and that matches up. So I'm going to go ahead and check that one off. And we'll go on down the line here and make sure that all of these match that I find. $76.48 on 10/31 for the water bill. And let's see, here's another Gleason Lawn and Landscaping one that's $450. And we'll notice that it's out of order here. So it's from the 14th, but for some reason the document numbers are in a different order than the dates, which means probably that those were paid by check and they were printed after some other transactions were done or something like that. So we'll have to go find the right date range. And we'll go down here and let's see, here's one for $450. And since it didn't have a description here and it doesn't have a description there, I'm guessing it's the right one. And there's the vendor, and it is. So we're going to check that off. And then let's see, tuition scholarship. That one's also on 11/14, and it's for Rebecca Owens for $1,500. And there it is. So we're going to go ahead and check that one off. And let's see what else we have here. Now we're back to 11/1, so we'll scroll back up in time. I could have resorted by date, but this keeps them separated by transaction type, so it's just as easy since it's not a whole big long list. It's a fairly short list. I don't have to do so much scrolling. So now we are at some salary ones, and here's a salary 11/1 for Teresa Carter for $1,140.84. And you'll notice that sometimes they don't clear in the same order that they were issued, and that's okay. So now there's Teresa Carter. We're going to go down to the next transaction. There's a pastor health plan for $300 for the vendor Concordia Health Plans, and that's on 11/1 as well. So let's see. Here's pastor health plan, $300. We'll check that off. I'm going to keep on going. Pastor retirement for $300. There's that. And there's Arlene Dowling's salary, $923.79. And I just keep on going here. Farmers insurance. We'll say, let's see, farmers insurance, $51.24. There it is. And here we go with Rebecca Owens' salary, and there's that one, $779.09. And U.S. Department of the Treasury, paying off some taxes here. Let's see if we can find that one. U.S. Department of the Treasury, is that the correct amount and date? It is, so we'll check that one off. And you'll see that as I check things off, I'm getting this difference and it's changing. We're not getting closer to zero just yet, so that's because we're still just taking out the payments. So we'll see how we get here. After the U.S. Department of Treasuries, we have Pastor Kent Williams' salary, and let's find him. Kent Williams, there he is. That's That's the 11-1 salary for pastor. And next we have Derek Woods' salary, $779.09. Let's check that off. And we have a matching amount of salary for Timothy Wright. Okay, we're getting there. Let's head on down the line. So, Allied Trash and Recycling, $35. There's that one. And electric bill, $121.47 on 11/7. $121.47. There it is. And an internet bill for AT&T, $65.43. There's that one. Let's go on down the line. Phone bill, CenturyLink telephone, $70.47. There's that one. And next, Liquid Gas Company, $101.47. There we go. And then we have the sewer bill, Meridian Waste Services, $64.71. The water bill, Missouri American Water, there it is, way up there, 76. Missouri American Water, 76.48, that's correct. And an advertising bill for the Yellow Pages for $120. Now you'll notice that's not everything that I have here. There's still a bunch of payments that I haven't checked off, but that's because these are only the payments that are on this statement. So they're only the ones that have actually cleared by the time I got a statement for the 15th of the month. So we're going to look down here then, and we're going to check off our deposits because we're still pretty far off, right, in our difference. So now we're going to scroll down because I separated out our receipts from our payments. And I have two deposits showing on my list here. There's this weekly offerings one for $772.25 on the 3rd. So that's this one, or $77.25, pardon me. And then $8,200 for this one on 11/11. That's this one. And that's everything that's on my bank statement. All of the rest of these have not yet cleared the bank, so we don't check them off. And you'll see that over here, we've now got a list of there have been $12,639.45 in payments during this time period. And in receipts, there's been $15,925. So now the ending statement balance, plus those payments and receipts, has come to a difference of 0 from our beginning balance. So now we know that we have correctly and happily balanced out our checking account statement against what we've actually got in Shepherd staff. So then when we get our next statement, some of these will have to still be checked off that are blank still at this point in time. Now, if I was still unsure or if I didn't get to 0 and I wanted to go check and see if I'm missing a transaction or something like that, I have the ability to click Save Work and then close out of here, and I can go back and look in my activity view and see what's going on. So I could go back and I could look for a particular transaction. I could find out, oh, hey, that transaction never got entered, and I could create it, date it for the actual date that it was done. For some reason, it got actually done, but it was never created in Shepherd staff. So if I had a payment, that was done online and I never created the equivalent payment in Shepherd staff, I could create that, get that all straightened out, and then go back to my tools and settings section there and go back to my bank statement reconciliation. I'd select again the Central Trust checking, and then all of the work that I did is still here that went because I saved my work when I went to leave there. So once we're sure everything is good and we've got our difference of 0 and we didn't have to do that, we could either clear all of this and start over if we had to, or we could go ahead and post our reconciliation. So I'm going to click Post, And it's going to tell me, are you sure? This reconciliation will mark all of your activity to cleared. Is that really what you want to do? And we'll say yes. And it says the reconciliation posted successfully. So we're going to close out of this view. We're going to go back to our activity view and look at some of those payments, and you'll see, like for instance, here's that water bill to Missouri American Water. The status now shows cleared. Here's those ones that we haven't cleared yet that still just show paid. Now those paid ones, we may be able to make some changes to if we needed to, but these ones that are already marked cleared, we've said, we verified against the bank and against the recipient, and everything is good. So these are now kind of locked in, and you can't make any changes to these except for example, if I was going to edit it, I could add a little memo or something like that. So these are said, this is saying, I paid this, it was received, the bank has marked it cleared, everything is good, so it can't be changed. Now, before version 9.0, that was pretty much it and you were stuck. You would have to create a journal entry to correct a thing like this if it turned out there was a mistake and that was the incorrect one to clear or something like that. Now, in Shepherd Staff, you have the ability to reopen a reconciliation. So we'll go back to Tools and Settings here, and you'll see this reopen option here. I'll select that. If I click Start, it's going to tell me this utility reopens the last bank statement reconciliation for the selected bank account. We recommend making a database backup before continuing. That's because once you've reopened it, you've actually made a big change to your data. Now all of those ones that were marked cleared will be marked paid again, and they'll be editable, and you would be able to make a correction on, say, an ACH transaction, a payment. So it's telling me which one was the last reconciliation. It's showing me all of the details of that reconciliation, your beginning and ending balance, your starting and ending dates. We're going to go ahead and click reopen, and we really would create a backup just in case, but we're going to just do it so that you can see. It's saying again, you're about to unpost that last bank statement. You're resetting it. Are you sure you really want to do this? You can't reverse it without restoring a backup, and we're going to say yes. And so now it's saying it's been reopened. It's been reversed, so now you can modify and repost it. So we'll click OK there. And now if I go back to bank statement reconciliation and I click Start and I select that same bank account, there it is again. So it's I could say, oh, actually this particular transaction hasn't gone through, and I could uncheck it, and then let's say whatever adjustments I needed to make to go back out there, correct that transaction. So I'd save work again, right? I'd uncheck something, I'd save work again, I'd go out there and correct that transaction, and then I'd come back and say, okay, now it's right. Now it's actually in Shepherd Staff. Now I have all the right information, and then I can post again when I'm back to zero. So, yep, we're going to post this again, and it'll be marked successful. Okay. So another thing that you can do when you're in a reconciliation, so let's go back as if we're going to do a brand new one again. And you'll see that you have the option here to print your reconciliation. You can print out either just the default or only the uncleared activity or only the cleared activity. This is just a report to show that you've done your reconciliation. And if I forget, like I did here, I can still go back and I can say reprint a reconciliation report. So if I click Start there, I select which account I'm going to reprint for, and I can select which reconciliation I want to print that report for, and I can go ahead and click Print here. And now I have that same report that I would have had if I'd clicked Print and chosen the default on the other view. So I have all of my transactions. This is showing me only the cleared ones. So actually, it's not the default one, but this is giving me basically what the report would look like if I printed it straight from the reconciliation view the first time. So you have the ability to go back and reopen the reconciliation, and you also have the ability to go back at any time and reprint an old reconciliation report. So that's the basics of the bank statement reconciliation. We also now, this is a 9.1 innovation. I mentioned earlier that we now have the ability to create a reconciliation for a charge statement. I don't have a mock-up of that one, but I'll show you what the actual reconciliation view looks like, which is going to be very similar. We just select charge statement reconciliation and we click start. We select our charge account. So you'll remember that yesterday in the morning we created this account, and in the afternoon we did some transactions related to this account. So I'm going to select that if you were with us that day. I'm going to select that account, and you'll see those two transactions. One where we paid some money out using that charge account, and then one where we paid off that charge account. So I could put in my beginning balance. If we recall, it was $500 was my beginning balance before I did anything. I don't remember exactly what our ending balance was, but we paid off, so it should be $148.25 because we paid off $500 worth. And so then if I check these off, oops, double click, and you'll see that we've got a balance of 0. So it works exactly the same as the bank statement reconciliation, but you would do it against your charge card statement. Obviously, we don't have a full month's worth of charges, so we're not doing, or even the 2 weeks that we did as a sample for the bank statement. But this is exactly how it would work. And again, you can print out that report that'll show you your transactions and the summary. You can save work just like in the other one. You can use the reconcile button instead of the checkbox, or to check off the checkbox instead of double clicking. You can also, by the way, click edit on any transaction in either of these views to open up that transaction. So if you knew which transaction was incorrect, you had it in your list and you just needed to adjust, like maybe the amount was incorrect, this is where you could do that just while you're doing your reconciliation to save yourself some time. You wouldn't even have to save work, go back out and do an edit on an existing transaction in the activity view. So once again, you would just click post once that's finished, and that would be exactly the same as your, but we're going to just click save work because we're going to wait until we have a full statement so that we can reconcile this. I will go back out, and you'll see that just like for the bank statement reconciliation, I also have the ability to reopen a reconciliation. We don't have any that have already been posted, so that's not an option in this particular situation. But once we've started posting our reconciliations, we'll be able to reopen them if we need to. And then again, reprinting the reconciliation report. So that's the gist of that. I hope that makes sense. And if there are some big questions, we can grab those at the Q&A session at the end. I am going to move on next to take you to the other reports view, where we're going to look at a whole little chunk of some of these reports that we haven't already looked at. In our previous sessions, we've looked at a few. We've looked at some of the budget things, and we've looked at the vendor ones and some of the transaction-related reports. So now we're going to start with your account and trial balance report. That's this very top one here. You'll see that it's defaulting to showing the current finance year and this month. I can change that if I want to see information about last year, let's say, and I want to see it through December of last year. I could see my account and trial balance information for last year that way. I can choose which book I'm doing. I can choose just to see certain types of accounts. I can choose various responsibility codes. You know, we created a couple of accounts that had me as the responsible person. In this case, I want to see everything. So I'm going to leave all of this just the way it is. And remember, as I mentioned before, that checking something in one of these does not affect the others. They're each independent. It's not like a cascading effect. So if you are trying to look at information for one specific thing or whatever. You just do it in its own little section here. And then under format, you'll see that there's a few options. The most common and the most sensible one to use for the accountant trial balance report is the current balance option. So we're going to look at that right now. And you'll see that I have the option here under these options to show monthly totals, to include inactive accounts, to exclude accounts with a zero balance, which is slightly different from an inactive account. An inactive account is one that I've edited and marked as inactive, whereas an account with a zero balance just means there's no money in that account right now. I can choose to cause a page break for each account type, and I can choose to sort my accounts by name instead of account number if I want to. I'm going to leave those all unselected right now, and we'll look at just the raw version of the report, just without any of those options. So we're going to click print here. We'll get a preview. Every time you click print in the reports view, you get a preview, so you don't have to worry about it like automatically printing out if it's not what you want or anything. And you'll see here in the accountant trial balance view, you have a section for each of your account types. And you can see them listed here so that you could jump to the section that you want. So if I just wanted to see my dedicated accounts, I could click there. If I want to see my liabilities, it'll take me back to the first page where my liabilities are listed. And you'll see a little red line as I do that. But I also can use in the view for reports, I have little arrows here that I can use to jump from page to page as well. And I can do this. I can click this to make this view a little bigger so that I can see things better. I often do this when I'm connected to another person's computer, helping them look at their information and find out where there might be a problem or something. We zoom in so that we can both see everything as clearly as we need to. I'm going to put that back to just 100% so that it's a little more of it on the page. And you'll see here, I've got my assets listed. It's showing me each of the assets there. It's showing me the activity through December, the beginning balance of the year, and remember we're in 2023, and the current balance on each of those. So that's going to be the same, the columns all the way down for each of the account types. So here's my assets, my totals for all of those columns. Here's my liabilities, the totals for all of those columns, income, expense. We'll get to the end of the expenses here for the totals of all the expenses. And then we have my dedicated accounts and the totals for all of those. Just note that dedicated accounts on a lot of reports are not included by default. They are included in the accountant trial balance report because this is all accounts. Some of the reports, it won't necessarily include them unless you tell those reports that you want them to be included in the options view. And we'll look at that in some of the reports here. And then you'll see at the end I have a summary. And we talked about earlier yesterday that Shepherd staff calculates your equity for you. And you'll see that here. For example, you'll have your book equity showing right here. And if you have your own equity accounts as well, it'll add that to those to show you a total equity. And if you don't, it'll calculate all of your equity for you. So you'll see that you've got several calculations here in the summary. You've got net income, so that's income minus expense. This one's calculating your book equity by doing the calculation of assets minus liabilities minus dedicated accounts, and that remainder is the equity. So that's a calculation that the system will give you in this report. It's kind of a handy one because you don't have to figure that out yourself. And then you'll see here liabilities plus dedicated plus assigned equity should equal your assets. So, well, should equal your assets, but this is the activity view. The current activity view. So your, yeah, and also there's another line. There it is. So this will give you that number. Well, let me zoom back out and see if we can see these all on one page. No, it's too big. I mean, it's too small. That's okay. So you can see that that number should be equal to your total assets. And that's all part of the counting equation. I wish that would all show on one page. I can't quite get it to. Let's see. Maybe if I do page break when type changes, then the summary will be all in one page. There we go. Okay, so now you can see that this calculation brings you to the same total as your total assets in each of the columns. And that calculation is assets equal liabilities plus dedicated plus your equity, basically. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one, and we're going to look at a couple of the other options you have here, because we mentioned formats. You can also see your debits versus credits for all of your accounts if you choose that format. If that's something that you are interested in keeping track of, you've got the debit balance and the credit balance. The year-to-date change is not about the debit and credit balance, it's about your total activity. And you'll see that in each of the account types. And then if we go to the end, you'll have that same thing for your total activity, but you'll have a separate calculation in the summary now for your total debits and total credits to make sure that the difference is zero, because if it wasn't, then you would be out of balance. So you want to see that on your report there, that comes out to zero. So again, you've still got your income and expense, you've got your activity showing assets minus liabilities minus dedicated minus assigned equity equals your book equity. So your equity is here. So depending on which format you have, you'll have different calculations at the end in the account and trial balance report. So we'll take a quick look at the budget versus actuals version of this. And that's going to give you, obviously, no budgets or actuals in your assets. So let's hop down to income, for example. And you'll see that you've got current balance, activity through December, budget through December, and how you're doing against that budget in these two places. And this is budget for remaining months, since we've done a full year of 2023 showing December's totals. We don't have any budget for the remaining month because we're already in December. So that's what your income and expenses will show, that information. So when you're looking at those other account types, those will be blank. Dedicated, you can budget, so you'll see those here as well. So if you had a budget, like for one of ours, for our building fund, we had a budget. So it's showing the how we're doing on that budget here. And then again, we have a summary view that looks similar to the first one, but it also has these sections with budgets versus actuals and the difference. So those are the options in the account and trial balance report. Let's talk about the balance sheet next. The balance sheet is generally a little bit, it doesn't have quite as much data on it as your account and trial balance. We're going to go ahead and look at the options that we have here. So we're going to leave it on December because I think it's good to see a full year worth of information. So you see that under format here, well, also you'll see that we don't have a whole lot of options to select account types and whatever, because a balance sheet is a specific thing and it includes certain account types. So it just will include them by default. You'll see that you have format options here. So we have 1 year, a 2-year comparison, a separate kind of 2-year comparison. So we'll look at some of these options here in a moment. We're going to start with that 1-year format. And you'll see that you have a level of detail that you can choose. You can show your major groups, your minor groups, and your accounts with the roll-ups for each of those. You can show it only by major group, only by major and minor. You can show it just on the account level. So you have all kinds of options for the level of detail that you want to show on that report, depending on the audience for the report. So we'll start with major minor account. That's sort of all the detail that you could possibly include. And you'll see here under options, you can consolidate your books by major and minor. You can include inactive accounts. We'll uncheck that because we don't want those. We don't really want to exclude accounts with a zero balance because we want to see that information and know that it's a zero balance for that account. We can show or hide dedicated account detail. I'll go ahead and click that, and then we'll see what it looks like without it. And then we can hide account numbers so that we only show names if we want to. And we can assort accounts by name or by number. So we'll just show it with the dedicated account detail hidden there. And you'll see I've got the balance sheet generally is assets, liabilities, and dedicated. And then it gives you a hide dedicated account detail. Well, I might have to look into that. Sorry about that. So it's listing out the beginning balance, the ending balance of the year, the change in that balance, and then the percent of change that that represents for each of the account types. So we've got our assets. It's listing out each of the major and minor groups. So the major is the bold, the minor are these ones with the 01, 02, 03. And then it's also listing out our liabilities, and it's listing our dedicated accounts, whether we select for it to or not, and that's fine. And then at the end, you'll see that it's showing book equity, and then it's showing you, because that's the part that it calculates for you, and then it's showing you your total liabilities, dedicated, and equity included together. So that's the basics of the balance sheet. Let's take a look at some of the alternate versions. So let's switch to the 2-year comparison number 1 here. And I'm going to change it to show you only major groups, just so that you can see what that might look like. We'll print that. And you'll see that it's much shorter because it's only showing you the categories, and it's rolled up all of the totals into those category levels. So if you were showing something to just to like a broader group that didn't need to know all of the individual details, this would be a good option to use. So you've got your assets listed, you've got your liabilities and your dedicated listed, and they're just sort of separated into categories. And you're seeing that these are all of the assets under central trust. Here's all the ones under Farmers Bank. And this time we have the beginning balance, the ending balance for 2 years in comparison. And instead of showing the difference between the beginning and ending balance, we're showing the difference between those 2 years. And again, it's showing us our liability and dedicated, and then it's adding the book equity down here that it calculates for you and giving you that total. So that total is going to equal out to your asset total. So let's look at the other 2-year comparison type. And let's change our level of detail again. Let's say that we want to see just the minor groups. So that will be separated out by checking, savings, money market, savings, investment. So you see that we've got, you'll see that we've got savings twice, and that's because those were under 2 different major groups. So the 01 savings was under Central Trust, and the 02 savings was under the Farmers Bank options. So it's a different way of showing categories that's a little bit more detailed, but it's not as detailed as showing all of the accounts. And again, this time you're going to see the difference between 2022 and 2023, your beginning balance, your ending balance, and your change. And you'll see the dedicated and book equity, and that total should always come out. The liabilities, the dedicated, and the book equity should always come out to the same as your assets. Let's look at a comparison to a prior month. So we're talking December of 2023 again. And let's say we want to see account only this time. So this is going to be all of your accounts, but not showing their categories, their major and minor groups. So we're going to do that one. And we're going to take a look, and you'll see that this time it's the balance as of November and the balance as of December of 2023. And that's the change between those 2 months that it's showing. And here it's showing you each of the accounts that's under your assets, each of the accounts that's under your liabilities, etc. And this time it has left out the detail on the dedicated, and it's just giving you the totals. So there we go. I still have that hidden. Let's look at that again with the detail so you can see how it looks like the other ones. So again, all of that's going to calculate out. It's giving you the percent change between the months this time instead of the years or the beginning and ending balances. So you've got all of those different options. Let's look at your 5-year comparison just for fun here. And this time it's not going to give you the difference. It's just going to list out for the last 5 years how each of those accounts ending balance was. And you'll have all of that, and then you'll have your calculations at the end, just like before. So that's some of the options you have in here. Let's talk about, let's next talk about the dedicated accounts report. We mentioned that some of the reports don't include dedicated accounts by default. Let's look at the report that's specific for dedicated accounts only. This is going to give you all of the information about those dedicated accounts for that year. I'm going to go ahead and switch to 2024 this time because we have added at least one dedicated account this year. We'll go to current month, as of the current month, and we're going to leave all of these options in place. We're not going to change anything here. Under level of detail, let's go to account. We're going to show each account. And then we're not going to include inactive accounts. We're not going to exclude accounts with a zero account balance, and we're not going to hide our account numbers. We want to see it all. And you can see that I can choose in this view whether I want that report to show up in portrait or landscape. We're going to look at it in portrait and see if there's any reason why we would want to see it in landscape. So you'll see here, I've got each of my accounts. So this is the transfer account that we created yesterday just so that we could move money back and forth. It's not going to have a balance at the beginning or end unless we have done it wrong, because every time using it, we are zeroing it back out. But the memorials, you'll show the progress of from the beginning balance to the ending balance, the money that's coming in and going out for the month of November and for the year to date. And then you'll see the total ending balance for the year to date. And then the same thing for each of the accounts. And then down at the bottom, you'll see a total for all of your dedicated accounts here. So I don't think that we need it to be landscape, but let's say that you had balances of millions of dollars. You might choose to put that into landscape so you'd have a little more real estate on your page to list out the vast amount of money you had in all of your dedicated accounts here. That report is a good way to show separately that money that you have designated for a specific purpose. So you might have a whole bunch of different things that you want to report on separately from your main income and your main expense, and that's the best report for those. So let's talk about your let's talk about your income statement, because there was a change between version 8.9 and version 9.0. Those of you who have been through that change know it was a vast change. But one of the differences was in reporting. There used to be a report that was called Statement of Income and Expense specifically. And a lot of people assumed that this income statement report should be the same report as the Statement of Income and Expense. It's not exactly. So we're just going to look at what it looks like here. You'll see again, you have some options here for what you can choose. We're not going to change that. We're going to go ahead and leave it in the current 2024 as of November view. And you'll see that I have some different options here. I can see period and year to date, or I can see the current period's history, which means this period, but in previous years, and the year to date history, which is the same as period history, only for year to date. So level of detail here, we can do major, minor, and account. We can do major group only, similar to the balance sheet one. So we're going to go ahead and do major, minor, and account. I'm going to not include inactive accounts. And let's see, here's one of the ones that I was mentioning where you can choose to include or exclude the dedicated accounts. So this is an income statement. I can budget my income for dedicated and expenses for dedicated accounts, and I can, if I choose to, include it on this report. So I would check that box to see it. I'm going to go ahead and leave it off for now, and we'll see what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and click print, and let's make this a little bigger. There we go. So you'll see here that I'm just giving the totals of November and of year to date, and for my income and my expense. There's 3 pages. Let's go ahead and see the rest. So we've got, well, that was the rest of the expenses, and then there's the actual summary at the end that's going to give you your net income. It's just showing you the income for the current period, the current month, and the year to date. So a lot of people were a little panicked because the income statement wasn't the same as the old statement of income and expense, which had the current month and the year to date, and it also had budget information. So let's go ahead and look at your treasurer reports, because that's where you can find that exact same report here. So under treasurer reports, you have a bunch of options for formats. We're going to start with the one that's the same as the statement of income and expense was in the old Shepherd staff. So the format here was current month, year to date, and budget remaining. We'll look at some other options here in the treasurer's report here momentarily, but that's the one, and we're going to go ahead with the default ones. We're going to, again, not include our inactive accounts, and I'm going to go ahead and click print just so you can see the basics of what you probably were used to seeing with the old Shepherd staff. So you've got in your current month, the budgets, the actuals, so the activity during that month, and then the percent of the budget that was spent during that time, and then how much is remaining of that budget. So you'll see that we are not, I say spent, but we're looking at income first. So the amount that was received during that time, and we've received 101% of what we budgeted for in the general fund, for example. And so we need nothing. We need less than what we've actually received to meet our budget. And then you'll see that the same thing we have here for the year to date. So we're doing really good against our budget. We might be able to increase our budget for next year and assume that we will receive more money in that general fund. So that's where you can see the current month and the year to date, and it's going to give you your budgets, your actuals, the percent of budget, and the remaining amount. And of course, we go on further and we see that for our expenses, we haven't spent as much as we have overspent what we budgeted here. So we probably do need to increase our expected income budgets in some places. So for each of the expenses that we have to kind of check that out and see how have we done against our budget for the current month and for the full year to date. And it looks like our remaining budgets, we're a little bit behind. So we have to kind of look into that. So that's the main statement of income and expense view. And you'll see that when we ran the report, it said statement of income and expense. When you choose the report, just make sure you're choosing current month, year to date, budget remaining to get that one if that's the version that you're used to and you like to look at. But let's look at some of the other versions of the treasurer's report that you have available to you. And you'll notice when I checked that, when I selected that just treasurer's report version, it shows me these column options. This is telling me what columns I'm going to see in the report. So if I click print, I'm going to see the actuals for the current period. So the current period is November. I'm going to see the actuals through November, and then I'm going to see what the budget was through November, and then I'll see the percent of budget. So this is a simplified version of that current month, year-to-date, budget remaining view that we were just looking at. So just depending on your needs and what you want to, how much level of detail you want to go into, any version of this can be the right one for you. Let's look at the summary at the end. So again, we're going to see our income minus expense, the actuals for November, the actuals through the year, and our budget. So, and how we are percent of budget. So we have received more than we expected, but we've also spent more than we expected by quite a bit more. So we've got a little bit of work to do to make that up. So we might have a little fun drive. So I'm going to close that and we'll go back and look at some of our other formats. Let's look at the treasurer's report without budget. I'm not sure how many of you might use that, but it's here. It's just giving you the actuals of what was taken in and spent during the current period and through the current period. So for the current month or the year to date. And again, you'll have the calculation at the end here. So, so this is the one that we looked at first. Then you have, this one is a slight variation. Instead of it being the budget remaining, it's the annual budget. So we'll look at that. So it's giving you the current month, and then instead of being year to date, it's the annual budget versus the year to date. So it's giving you a slightly different calculation. Then period history can show you your actuals over time through several years. So that can be really handy to see, hey, how are we receiving money? Like it looks like it was up, it went down a little, I should say, it went down a little here and it went back up even more this year. So we're doing better than we were last year, but we still have some work to do, etc. So we can kind of see a trend of how our income and expense went over the last several years. So that's a 5-year report. That one was just for the month in question. So this one is for the same thing, only through the current month. And this one is for total annual history. So if you do this one, annual history, you're going to obviously not get accurate data for 2024 because we're not at the end of it yet. But these all will be the totals that were received or spent in those years, except for this one, which is just so far this year. And you'll see that we have a custom report option. And that's one of the reasons why you can a lot of times see the columns here, is because you can choose what those columns should be. So it's always going to default to whatever the last one was you were looking at when you bring this up. But if I choose custom report, I can choose the options that I want to see. So you'll see, like, for example, I might want to see my budgets for my budget for the entire year. And then I might want to see my actuals for the year to date. And then I might want to see, let's blank that. Let's blank these out so I can then, there we go. So then I want to see my actuals for the current month. And I want to see if I do here, change column 3 less column 2. That's probably not what I want. I probably want my, let's put actuals first for year to date. And then I want my budgets for period and my actuals for the period. And then I can show column 3 less column 2. And that will give me like a calculation of the current month, how we did on the budget. So this might not be a custom report anybody actually wants, but it'll give me the budget of November, the actuals of November, how we did between the budgets and the actuals in November. And this was giving me just my current, my budget as of the end of November. So I can do a lot of different options, and some of them involve calculations. So the calculations are fairly limited in terms of what options you have, because you can see do percents or changes for specific columns depending on which one you're in. So you have to make sure that whatever you filled in up above here is the actual in the order you want it to be in to create the calculation that you want. But you can do a lot of custom options that way. And then all months actual is just going to list you every month of the year and show what was spent or brought in during those months. And then all months actual versus budget will show you both the actuals and the budget for each of those months. So that's the main stuff for that one. We are right at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and start on our quiz. Let's get rid of our bank statement and head into our quiz. So first question, Shepherd staff now, or well, it's true or false. Shepherd staff now offers a charge statement reconciliation. True or false? Let's see what everybody thinks about that. I launched the poll. Okay, looks like everybody's in agreement on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share the results. And the answer is true. Users can now reconcile transactions to a charge account in the same way they would for a bank statement. So that's a good answer. And the next one, true or false, reconciliations cannot be reprinted once they are posted. Let's see what you think about that. Okay, looks like we are mostly in agreement on that one as well. I'm going to go ahead and share those results and we'll look at the answer. And it's false. Once you are have posted, that is after you've got version 9.1 or 9.0 or after, you can reopen and or reprint a reconciliation. So that was back in that tools and settings view. You had three options. One was to do your reconciliation, one was to reopen a completed reconciliation, and one was to reprint a reconciliation report. So that's those options. And we'll go to the next one here. True or false? Reconciled transactions cannot be edited once they are posted. Let's see how you feel about that one. And I'll tell you what, I'm a little ambivalent about this one because, and I'll show you because you guys were too, because while the answer is true, to the extent that transactions with a cleared status can't be edited, you can now reopen that reconciliation, which will change that status back to paid, and then you can do, you could maybe void or change a transaction. So while it's true that you can't edit it once it's been cleared, you can go and unclear it. So we're kind of all right on that one. So here's the next one. The Treasurer's Report offers budgets and actuals numbers for a selected month, year to date, and the entire fiscal year. True or false? Okay. Go ahead and share that. Everybody's in agreement on that one as well. Yes, true. You have lots of different formats of the Treasurer's Report, and all of those options are available in one or another or many of them. So you can do as many different versions of the Treasurer's Report as there are people out there, mostly, and they can do all of those things. So let's go back to our list and talk about the dedicated accounts. They're not included in a lot of your budget and actuals reports by default. Is that true or false? Launch that. Okay. So we'll go and look at that one. And that is true. A lot of the reports have an option in that little options box to include the dedicated numbers. And you also have a separate report just for your dedicated accounts. So you can, in some of them, see it by default, but in many of the reports, you have a little checkbox that you will check if you want to include them. Okay, so let's look at our questions. I see we have some out there. All right. Let's see. So it looks like most of these have been answered, but let's share with the group for some things. Thomas had asked, can statements be downloaded directly into Shepherd staff to create transactions? Unfortunately, we don't have that ability. It is kind of a neat idea. It's something that we could, on your behalf, mention to the development team so that they could maybe do that in some future time, but we don't really have that as a option at this time. Oh, I am so sorry. I did not take off my camera at this time. I did the last 2 times. I forgot about it this time. I apologize for that. And Lucinda asks, shouldn't we print out reconciliation reports before posting? And yes, we should. I didn't in that first instance so that I could show you how you can go back and reprint. But when you're creating your reconciliation, clicking that print button is the easy way to do that, clicking it on the reconciliation screen so that you can print out that report and have it handy before you even post the reconciliation. But you do have the option to go back and reprint one from that reprint option in the tools and settings view as well. And okay, looks like those were the questions that were out there. Does anybody have any other questions or anything else that they'd like us to look at real quick? If not, I will make up for some of the extra time I took from you yesterday afternoon by setting you free a little bit early today. I thank you all for joining me. I appreciate your patience with me, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the future as in support. Have a wonderful day.